Uh, I don't want to wait. I wanted to do it a different way though. I wanted this to look a little differently, Bill. I wanted it to look like this. There we go.
Oh, all right.
All right. All right. So there we go, Bill. Now we're the way I want it.
Testing. Once
Welcome.
again,
There we go. Hey, testing your. Are you tap your mic there just to make it?
can you hear
Yep.
it?
Yep. I hear. I hear pretty good.
All
All
right.
right. All right. Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
Bill, what a it's just this is something, Bill. The reality we're living in. We've got a new pope. We've got
Yeah, aren't you gonna? I'm back from Italy. You didn't. Aren't you gonna acknowledge I've been on the road and?
all right. Let's stop the show. We're acknowledging.
Well, you at least you say, "Hey,
you
Bill,
know,
welcome back. I missed
I'm
you."
not.
Right?
You know me, Bill. I don't go for pleasantries. That's not like I do actually social. I do say a lot of good mornings, good hi. I do a lot of pleasantries,
Yeah,
but
it was,
but
other
with
people,
strangers.
not with me, right? Not with me.
No pleasantries with you. No, not at all. It does not
All right.
happen. You
Well,
got new
that's true.
glasses though, Italian
Well,
glasses.
these are actually I had because I had an eye thing. I need a new prescription, and so I'm wearing old glasses, and I went through 2 old pairs that broke. So this is I got these in Assisi at a pharmacy in Assisi, and so they're not prescription. So anyway,
Well, Bill, it's interesting that when Donald Trump was offered this plane by Qatar,
what did something happen while I was gone?
Qataris, what do you call them? Qataris,
I don't know.
Qataris, right? Qataris.
Welcome back, Qataris.
It's interesting because the press secretary was asked, "How do we know that there's no quid pro quo going on? That there's no strings attached to this gift that was offered by the Qataris?" To which she said, "Absolutely not. There is none because the American people know that President Trump only works in the interest of with the American public and mine." You just get to be that trustworthy.
It's amazing what she can say with a straight face.
Do you think those Qataris were like, "Oh man, we offered too much"? That cheap bastard, that greedy bastard folded like a chair. We didn't even go we could have gone with a $10 million plane.
Well, yeah, I heard that they couldn't get rid of it. They were trying to get rid of it, is what I read somewhere today. That's so they unloaded it. Yeah.
Well,
she's special. She is a special person.
She is. She's this nice looking woman. I'm just saying, look, I try to say nice things about people, and she's a looker,
kind of
in an Eva Braun kind of way. So right now his sons are just running around playing little global hopscotch, striking deals that are directly benefiting their father. But this is what I now am seeing and appreciating about the Trump administration.
Okay, go.
Donald Trump campaigned on making Americans more prosperous, and he's just starting with his own family. So sometimes you got a sense, what is this, the Augustinian order of love, right? The J.D. Vance term, he starts at home.
Yeah.
So so the American turn to prosperity will happen first with prosperity at Mar-a-Lago and within the Trump family.
Apparently, what's her name? What's the awful person from Georgia, Marjorie?
There's so many. Marjorie Taylor Greene,
yeah. She when she became a congressman, she was worth $600,000. She's now worth $20 million.
Wow, I think my net worth went down since we started this podcast. I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did.
I'm sure it did. But you got a nice mic. You have a nice microphone, and you upgraded your computer, so you're moving.
I do. I'm moving along. So this is well, Bill. You're back from Italy. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
How was the pasta?
It was good. Yeah, food was great. And in Rome, the food was fine. In Rome, everywhere else was amazing. Yeah. So, which other people say. Hmm?
So it's not as good in Rome.
Well, Rome is very touristy. It's a different, it's also a Jubilee year, so there were lots of Rome was packed. And this was even before the Pope thing. So yeah, it was. Yeah, but we had a great trip. Wonderful, very interesting pilgrimage, and very moving, and yeah, very fascinating. Yeah, it was a great trip. And it's an interesting
Wow.
thing too. I said this is a future podcast, but I think I knew Roman history, and I knew Christian medieval history, but I never really had done a deep dive in Italian history. And what a mess! I'm just going to say and it's fascinating too, just to understand. Suddenly Mussolini makes more sense than ever. And maybe if I sent you that I read a book on Italian history, and
It's a great quote on fascism.
one of the best understands what fascism really is and what it isn't. And part of me, I mean, we're not talking about this today, but it's interesting that um, sometimes the need to create the power of national myth, right? The power of the myths we tell ourselves, and that again and again. I mean, this maybe is a nice lead in to the Augustinian Pope, is that um, the virtues of fascism, which in some levels is part of the myth of Mussolini, was they were getting back to the classic period, but most of those virtues and most of the myth behind those virtues are just antithetical to the gospel. I mean, the two cities model is still one that actually is pretty helpful, and to a certain extent. And I even watched on the airplane. I watched the new Odysseus movie with Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche.
He is jacked in that movie. I saw pictures of him, like his
Oh
workout
yeah. I mean,
from
he's a
that
60-year,
movie, and
and
I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
but what's interesting is, I mean, basically,
He didn't skip leg day.
no, but I mean, basically, it has Orpheus. Part of the reason it took him so long to get home is he has PTSD from what they did to Troy, and they play that very well. And there's this the final scene where he kills all the rivals. It's just what happens afterwards, and you're just reminded that, and frankly, it's part of what's going on right now in our own country. The pagan virtues are really the very things that Jesus says no to in the temptations, right? Material wealth, status, and power. That's what drove the Roman Empire, and the legacy of losing that is part of what fed some of the worst chapters of the last 200 years of Italian history. And it might be a myth that we're currently falling for as well as a country. So it's an interesting thing to
This
for
is
me
certainly
to
the Ross Douthat take, right? That there's
yes.
the paganism, the sort of there's a kind of paganism on the right, a classical.
Well,
paganism.
there's a paganism on the left, and it's interesting that that a lot of conservative Christians have embraced a different kind of paganism on the right as a corrective, and yeah, and I think, I mean, I mean, we're having a freaking military parade in Washington, like like we've become Soviets, we've become everything that
We're
we as,
nationalists without the socialism, is what we are.
yeah,
At
right.
least in European national socialism, you actually get a little socialism, right? You get a little health care,
You
you get a little free
get a little
education.
healthcare. It's a big line. You have to stand in a
Yeah,
really
hey, look,
big line.
hey, you know
But
what?
no, but I'm just
Patience is a virtue, Bill.
Right. Except if you have a really bad disease, and then patience is the way to get to heaven. So,
By the way, speaking of bad disease, stage 4 cancer that's metastasized, you don't just find that out.
oh no, you do.
I mean,
Oh,
stage 4. I all the medical
no,
stuff I heard, all the
no.
commentaries I heard were there's no way that you well, one commenter I was saying was the doctor not testing for it. There is the question of, do you test it more aggressively in the 50s? Because if you pick up because prostate cancer in your 50s is more lethal than it is as you get older if it develops.
Well,
like people,
all cancer is more lethal when you're younger because it takes your metabolism slows down, so it takes you longer to die from cancer when you're older.
But stage, see, I don't know. There's
Well,
just a lot. There's a lot, Bill. Also with the book, the whole original sin book, and going to and the like going to retiring to the residence at 4:00 and nobody sees you for the rest of the day. It's not good, Bill. It's not good.
No, it's not
I just
good.
say the Democrats are going to have to win back some trust in that.
Well,
this is,
but again, it's the double standard. I mean,
it's not a double standard. I just addressed the kleptocracy.
No, I agree. And you and I have said early on, we were not pleased with him staying in the race. I totally agree with that.
But it's more than the race, though. It seems that this was maybe not in the best place to steward the country. I mean, maybe the decline was worse, and that's what people. I mean, look, this is what the original sin book is telling us, right? That people are just that even staffers didn't have access, that it was really managed because
it was like a Woodrow
the decline
Wilson.
The decline was really bad, and I think this is what. Well, I know. I mean, look. I mean, and you know what? I'll say this: they didn't do a bad job managing it because I think we knew he was older, but I mean they managed it pretty well because it's not. They covered it.
Well, the country was run better, 100% better with a declining Joe. And I don't. Oh, who did this?
I don't even know. I don't know what that was. I don't know.
You got the data. No, I think
that's okay for those people that are listening. We do this as a reminder. We do this on live stream, and it goes to Facebook Live, and it goes to YouTube and stuff. And so somebody somehow there's just a thumbs down. But you know what? There's something about the cameras with Google Chrome that I might have made a gesture, and it might have been thinking I was making a thumbs down gesture. So a big thumbs down in a bubble just popped across the screen.
I mean, Woodrow Wilson, FDR. There's no way FDR should have had a fourth term. Ronald Reagan was when he was running for second term, was in early stages of
sure. Now,
I'm not saying that's not to justify it. It's saying that it at all. I mean, I think it was problematic. And I mean, you and I said early on, he would have been, I mean, what he did for the country was, and a one-term president was important. And the failure to,
if at the midterms he would have said, I served my country and I'm riding into the sunset, my mission accomplished, he would have gone down as virtuous and an important pivotal feature, and not as the demented guy that stayed too long and probably
and now it's going to take history, if we still have a history 20 years from now, to reappraise all that, because now there's but regardless, I do think it's a problem. And I think it's obviously Trump is declining cognitively. I mean, so we shouldn't have these. I think there should be an age limit on when you could be president.
I think there
should be. We don't need. Again, my father-in-law is 88, still practicing law. He's forgotten more than most people ever know. He's sharp as a tack, and sharper than either of the presidents the previous one, the one we have now. But he himself would not want to be would not want the nuclear codes right now. And I think we'd be fine if he was in charge. But there's a sense where that's rare. That's not.
You know how they have the football? Isn't it interesting that that's never been streamlined? Or it's still like a suitcase. Couldn't that be an app now? Couldn't you have the football?
How much do you bet it's not? Well, you don't want it on an app, but I bet you how much is that just symbolic? I don't know. I did know a number of years ago, and this may be 10 years ago, that what are you laughing about?
I'm just thinking like, yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, I guess you could get hacked. But then can't you hack it on the phone? I don't know.
But some of those nuclear things were still on floppy disk as of 5 to 10 years ago. So yeah, I don't know. It's unfortunate, and I guess is Jake Trapper trying to be Woodward now to do the insider thing? I don't know.
I knew Bob Woodward, sir. And you, Jake, are no Bob Woodward. You're not even an Andrew Cuomo or Chris Cuomo.
Well, they showed a clip from one of those press conferences where Barack Obama says, and I see that Jake Trapper's retiring from being a journalist. He's joining CNN.
Fake news.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so
an Augustinian Pope. We
Augustinian Pope. Yeah. So
and also a Chicago Pope. And it's interesting in true Chicago style, where there was 132 bishops voting, and Pope Leo got 172 votes. So it was it's a true Chicago papacy.
That's a good joke. I haven't seen that.
You get it, yeah. There's several popes from the 19th century that voted.
So we had dead cardinals voting for him.
Yeah, I think Augustine cast a vote in there somewhere. Yeah, it's
a
resounding victory.
Well, it's funny today at my Protestant Bible study at my church, people were quoting the Pope. They were talking about how the pitch perfect he's been, and how simplicity and humility has been impressive to my Protestant. Although I have some, we're kind of it's amazing. I brought my closet Catholicism even to Puritan, post-Christian New England, because it shows its face, right? But I think it's you sent me an article and I read it on the airplane, but remind me what I read, because who about
what, your brain, it kicks out at 10,000 feet. Wait.
Well, apparently I should have retired at midterm. Maybe you keep trying to send me to a home.
Yeah, so I'm gonna write the Bill Bohr book. Bill Bohr, everybody, like, I can't even get him to podcast after 5 anymore. He's going on. He doesn't remember what I send him anymore.
It's good. It's good that I forget some of what you send me.
So yeah, I this article that appeared. This was appeared. I guess I sent it to you around May 12th, so that would have been like 8 days ago. And this appeared in America, the Jesuit Review, which is a great magazine. And they have a podcast. I don't know if they still do it, but they were doing it, called Jesuitical, which is not bad. I listened to it a few times. And James K.A. Smith, who I think is at Calvin College, right? Or is he?
Yes, he is at Calvin College.
Great, one of the great neo-Calvinists, the great Dutch Calvinists.
Here we go. They get Calvin right, those Dutch Calvinists.
Hey, man.
They like you. They like those later year Calvin.
Calvin. They like
the last as the Visigoths are surrounding the city. You get that late Providence, and you get the predestination. You get those last
closing time. Yeah, man. 2 a.m. Calvin's what I like.
Yeah.
So this is an article by James K.A. Smith, which we'll put a link on the show notes. What to expect from an Augustinian Pope. And right. he said, when his phone started blowing up, and he was thrilled that a fellow Villanova Wildcat had just been elected Pope. By the way, I think Jack Caputo tweeted out, I met Caputo somewhere once at some emergent thing. Of course, sort of postmodern theologian, philosopher at Villanova. And Caputo said, the Pope took my continental philosophy class in the late 70s. He's well prepared on Heidegger and Husserl. So great.
What my boys, they were recruited for Villanova, and they all go, used to call it Villanofun. That was the name. Villanofun.
looked fun to me. My
Oh
buddy
no, I
there.
think it's a great school. No, I actually looked at it as an undergraduate. Yeah.
Yeah, Villanova is a nice,
Oh, it's
beautiful
great. No,
campus.
it's beautiful campus. Yeah.
So Jamie Smith says, Jake James Smith says that this is an interesting thing. As someone, his work has been dedicated to Augustine and sort of merging or interpreting or kind of putting in conversation his Dutch Calvinist tradition
Mhm.
and Saint Augustine, and Smith also. I don't know if he did his doctoral work at Villanova or what, but he early on in his career was one of these kind of evangelicals working in postmodern philosophy and trying to put those traditions in the conversation. So an interesting guy.
Well,
I
yeah,
want to I
that
want to say I've had him on a podcast or something, but maybe I haven't. I don't know. We
well
were
that
talking.
was that's the
Maybe
whole
I don't
radical
know.
orthodoxy, right? That was their
Radical. Well,
tradition.
he was interviewing Peter Lightheart or somebody. Somebody was it he that was interviewing in the radical orthodoxy, or maybe somebody was being interviewed in the radical orthodoxy group, and they said to the person that was being interviewed, "So how long have you?" Milbank wants to know, how long have you been part of the movement? And the person said, "Movement? I thought it was a book series."
That's Cunningham said that.
Cunningham, yeah, was it
Yeah,
Cunningham?
yeah, I think Cunningham said that.
This is I've forgotten so much, Bill.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I'm
Yeah,
ready. I'm ready to
I think I
retire.
think
Me,
I think we'll bump you ahead of me in the waiting list for the
I'd
home.
love it. I would love to live in assisted.
That's
If I could go to assisted living tomorrow, I would do it tomorrow. Absolutely, I would love it.
you've moved away. You the camera is playing with you a little bit
I know
there.
it's the cameras
But
won't.
here's our here's a commercial. Wait a minute, do your Diet Coke commercial, or is this Coke
Yeah.
Zero?
Hey, this is Coke Zero. Suck it, RFK. Come take this Coke Zero out of my cold, dying hand, you nanny state bastard. Screw RFK.
You just keep doing that for me alone.
Oh, okay. I can't stand that guy.
We used to do that. Sometimes we do a skit when I was doing youth work, and none of the kids laughed, and we go, and we thought it was hilarious. And go, sometimes we just do it for ourselves, right there. So you just keep doing the Coke Zero break.
And
I love that.
I didn't used to hate RFK. I liked him, I think, before he got in, and now it's the nanny state. I just I want to see Trump make him eat more McDonald's cheeseburgers.
Well, you too, yeah, you two were, I mean, you were trying to hide dead baby cubs together.
Exactly. I
Haircut.
respect his workouts. too. I think I've watched some of his workout videos.
His workout, yeah. Hey,
So impressed.
he got Larry David's wife, all that stuff.
She's cute. She's very, very, very attractive woman in the non-Eva Braun sense. So, yeah. So in this, piece, Smith says something about what an Augustinian Pope. Here's someone who's in the Augustinian order, and he talks about how for Augustine, baptism is not an arrival and conversion is not the end of the road, that both are just the beginning of a journey with and into God's life. And he says elsewhere, I've described this as Augustine's refugee spirituality. Every human heart, Augustine suggests, is both running from something and towards something. We experience alienation and unsettledness in this world, but we also have a home hunger that compels us to look, as Pope Leo put it, for a homeland that we've never seen before. So there's that stream, that journey, that conversion, that pilgrimage theme.
Yeah.
And he also picks up in the piece the togetherness theme, right? That how Augustine, when he was made bishop, he made it a prerequisite for accepting it that he could have an order, a monastic
Right.
order, so that he wouldn't be alone. And
Well, I think that's what Peter Brown in his great biography, Augustine says. You soon realize that he's never alone. He always has a community around him, and well, even it's funny. We in the men's Bible study today, it is just reminding ourselves that almost all the letters are from Paul and somebody. Paul and Timothy were reading Colossians today, and he engages with the founder of the church there in Colossia. And so he mentions him by name, Epiphagus or whatever, I forget his name, but this idea of this community that even constructed theology is, is pastoral work. It's all a function of the church, right? It's all a function of the ecclesia, the people of God, the gathered people of God.
Yeah, and so that, I mean, these are themes which he sees as themes that would shape an Augustinian papacy. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was thinking how there's a couple different streams in Augustine. There's these streams that Smith identifies. Stanley Hauerwas once said that at the Reformation is almost like a divorce settlement where the Catholics took Augustine's ecclesiology and the Protestants took his soteriology, and there's something to that probably, and maybe it's theological anthropology, right? It's
I think more theological anthropology because, and I don't think Protestant soteriology is Augustinian fully, but I think there is this kind of divide. Well, we've talked about that before. Really, something that's often missed about the Reformation. The Reformation is much an argument about the proper interpretation of Augustine as it is the scriptures, right?
And the Jansenists had it right.
Yeah.
So there you go, Augustinus.
Yeah, there we go.
My tribe. That's my community.
That's your tribe.
Yeah. Maybe Leo will lift the heretical judgment on the Jansenists.
Well, yeah. So Jansenists are out of purgatory, and Pete Rose gets into the Hall of Fame.
That's fantastic. That would be, these would be righting of historical wrongs. Pete Rose never bet against his own team. So he says.
Yeah, like we've said before, yeah. Being in the Baseball Hall of Fame is not about being a good person. It's about
no, it's not.
No,
it's not.
So yeah.
So I mean, I think, and I probably like that Augustine. I like the low anthropology Augustine, largely because I have a minimalist anthropology myself. I have a pretty low view of, or a high view of the need for God's grace, however you say it. I think.
Well, and
I'm allergic to synergism. I am an utter monarchist, as was also Augustine. I think. I mean, I think the tradition, at least the Roman Catholic tradition, reads Augustine in a more synergistic way, right? And I think that's probably
because there's so much. I mean, he wrote so much. He's actually somebody you could talk about early, middle, and late Augustine, because he just was writing, and his theology was being developed, often in the midst of both pastoral issues and theological conflict. So you can't. Because I think that good biblical scholarship's got away from this, but when people talk about, well, Paul's thought developed, I go, wait, he wrote at most for 8 years. I mean, so. But Augustine,
this podcast is 8 years old. We have developed,
but Augustine,
we've put out more content than Paul.
We have. Oh, yeah, we did that. I think the first couple months.
yeah, exactly.
We did that just trying to figure out how the microphones work.
Eat your heart out, Apostle Paul.
No, but I think Augustine, you definitely can see. Even it's interesting because when I was doing my doctoral work on Augustine, particularly in the Pelagian debate, where Augustine begins and where he's at in the middle, he almost kind of feels like he has a balance. But where the Augustine that you love, where he ends up, it's a very different place than where he started.
I got 2 words for you, Bill. And they're beautiful words. They're like the most beautiful words next to tariff in the English language, okay? Infant damnation. Okay, we love it. We love that. We love that. Especially if the infants are illegal. Okay. We got to put American infants first. Okay.
I actually think we could argue that the entire American population's in limbo right now.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that's what else yeah.
So I think the article was interesting. I mean, on one level, every post.
What you remember of it?
Yeah, what I remember. I think I remembered a good bit right there. It came back to me. But one of the things I do think it's always helpful to remember that, you could argue that every pope has been Augustinian since at least Gregory the Great. So maybe the greatest Augustinian pope of all time. I mean, in terms of his thinking, but it's helpful to be reminded of foundations, right? And I think it's a really, you and I we talk a lot about this. Where do you find your grounding in the current state of things? And I think I just think the play that Augustine, it's just very helpful, particularly for biblicists like myself and other
Not
people.
me. Not me.
To be reminded how much play there was, and what a creative process it was trying to figure these things out. And the scripture being which they prayed every day, they lived it, they preached it, but it was also something that there was a lot of room for creative engagement. And I think Augustine is well, there's a reason the radical orthodoxy folks were re-engaging with Augustine, because those are shoulders that are big enough to stand on in transitional times.
Smith has this great passage where he talks about, and he's written about this elsewhere, but he's talking about Augustine's notion of the two cities, and it's not the 16th century two kingdoms, right? These are not realms or sort of spheres in the earthly order.
I just said flee from that Lutheranism. Flee from it.
I don't know that you flee from it, but
flee from it. Run.
I think Augustine here, he says, Augustine distinguished between the earthly city and the city of God, not as two planes of existence, a distinction between heaven and earth, but rather as two different ways of being a civitas, a people or a republic. What distinguishes the earthly city from the city of God is not mundane, material earth versus ethereal, eternal heaven, but rather, Augustine emphasizes, two different ways of loving. The earthly city is a way of being human animated by the libido dominandi, a lust for power and domination. The republic that is the city of God is characterized by a love of God and neighbor that expresses itself in a willingness to sacrifice for others. And that is what it's all about, right? If Augustine and Nietzsche agree on anything, it has to be true, right? And they're both united, I think, in the fact that what drives the human condition, human being, is what you want, is desire, right? That we're not rational animals, we're rationalizing animals. That usually the mind follows after the will, after the heart, after what we want. And so this is, for Augustine, it's not that this distinction is not between spheres or government and the church or this nation and that or like he says, heaven and earth. It's two ways of loving, of being in the world, two ways of attaching. And the heavenly city is not about domination, but about love.
Yeah, my love is my gravity.
Yeah. That sounds like a great song title.
Yeah, well, Augustine had a hit with it. Yeah. No, I think it's absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And, it's interesting because Justo Gonzalez, the great church historian and thinker, Cuban-American theologian, wrote a book called The Mestizo Augustine. And in it, he talks about Augustine as living a kind of hybrid life from his time of his birth as a child of a Roman father and a Berber North African mother. And he says, his whole theology and way of being reflected this mestizo sort of on the way in between worlds sort of approach. And he says, Pope Leo's own Creole heritage reflects this sort of legacy.
Yeah.
And, he's been, American, but yet he took Peruvian citizenship and really connected with indigenous folks in Peru. And so, and he even is somebody that roots for the White Sox, which is really hoping against hope.
That alone is an apocalyptic move.
And who else is a White Sox fan? The great David Fitch.
David Fitch, who you lovingly engaged with today.
I lovingly always been
dude,
our dear friend.
Dude,
Friend of the show, Dave.
Friend of the
Dave,
show.
Dave Fitch.
Yeah. So again, to be, I think, Pope Leo for such a time as this. Right?
Yeah, and I want to close with this great message Smith had, which I think is something that, in his own way, Leo is preaching. When he's been radically in his opening address, he talked about Christ and the need for Christ and people's dismissal of Christ, and yet his relevance to the modern world. Smith says everybody's got a hungry heart, as the Augustinian bard of New Jersey put it. And when Jesus offers us peace, what he really offers us is rest. Come to me, you who are weary and carrying a heavy burden, Jesus says, and you no longer have to keep proving yourself. You can rest because Jesus' love is not predicated on your performance. Your restless heart can find a home here. And isn't that so much about Augustine, the journey home? And
yeah, late I have loved thee. Yeah.
Yeah, may we all find home somewhere on the journey.
Amen.